Feel like I'm forgetting something. What, did I leave the oven on? Oh wait, the SMT4 video! Hey, I'm back after much procrastination to talk about Shin Megami Tensei IV. This is going to be a bit of a more difficult video to write than normal, mainly because it's been a little while since I played this game. When I made my video on SMT3 Nocturne, I had just finished it, and when it came out, I had only just finished both 4 and 4 Apocalypse. But then, as it tends to do, life took over, and videos were far from my mind. I put out a few others, mainly just so I could upload something, but through it all I had the looming shadow of talking about SMT4 lingering over me. I'm going to use this time to talk about 4, as well as my thoughts on how SMT1 and 2 tie into them in my experience. Don't worry though, I have plenty of notes from when I played the first time around to keep this video in the first experience talk, and I have plenty of my own hot takes to distribute to the internet. So, without further ado, let's start with... I watched the Marsh videos on SMT1 and 2, which means I'm on the same footing as 90% of the rest of the fanbase. To be completely honest, he explained those games better than I ever could, so this part of the video is really going to be about my experience learning more about the SMT world through the traditional pastime of LARPing. Also, I got a major part of my video wrong on SMT3 when I had an entire incorrect story on why Dante from the Devil May Cry series showed up legally. So my talking stick privileges are now heavily restricted lest I spread more misinformation. What I did allegedly get right last time though was that, long story short, there was a Japanese book series called Digital Devil Story, which got an adaptation for the original Famicom in 1987 called Megami Tensei. After that, the company who made that adaptation said, I liked the concepts in that, and made their own sequel unrelated to the books, Megami Tensei II. Then they made a soft reboot of this franchise game of telephone, and called that Shin Megami Tensei, which then spawned its own media behemoth that we all know in LARP. I came out of SMT3 knowing some things and needing to be educated on others. Nocturne was another kind of soft reboot for the franchise and did some things with the series mainstays that are very different in most of the other games, particularly the endings. I remember going into SMT3 and basically being given 6 options on where I wanted the story to end, along with whoever I sided with or didn't side with in that game, but that was a bit of a twist on the usual formula. Sure, in most SMT games, including 1 and 2, you get to choose what kind of ending you get based on who you side with, but it's much more black and white in your choices as opposed to the different factions I saw in Nocturne. They usually boil down just to law, chaos, and the ever-elusive neutral. And while that was a bit of a culture shock at first, it quickly became apparent to me that Nocturne was really the odd one out, for many different reasons in and out of lore. See, usually, to put the endings in the simplest terms, you normally consider the law and chaos endings the extremist bad-ish endings, and you try to aim for the more neutral one to get the quote-unquote true ending of the story you're experiencing. It's the same overall thing that Nocturne did with its endings, but that game had a little bit more variety in its choices and broke the mold in that way. The other big thing I learned about was more the common lore that the overall series shares between the games, and that would heavily bleed into my experience with SMT4 and recontextualize 3. I once again highly recommend you check out Marsh's videos on these games because they go into way more detail than I will here, but to dumb it down, SMT1 is about a portal to the world of demons opening in Japan, creating a conflict between the forces that want to control Earth. We find out that some scientist named Steven accidentally created a doorway to the Expanse, and quickly created a computer program to not only translate the language of demons within it, but also allow us as the players to use those demons in our party. That's the big first difference that SMT3 had as opposed to most of the other games in the series, because when we played as Demi-Fiend, he could already speak the demon language and recruit demons that way, but usually people use this program created by that Steven guy. In any case, the demons break out eventually, and our character teams up with a few others to try and figure out a solution. About halfway through the game, the USA literally nukes Japan, and the party is sent 30 years into the future. There, the forces of complete conformist law and pure uncontainable chaos are setting up shop to bring about a new world in the ashes of the old one, and your party is pretty split on who they want to support. Depending on your choices in the game, you either get to topple your opposing side, or maybe even both of them so you can create a neutral world independent from gods and demons. A really cool thing about these factions, and just about how SMT deals with these concepts as a whole, is that it's not a good or evil scenario, but literal extremes. It reminds me a lot of my favorite work of fiction ever, which is called The Invisibles. It deals with a lot of similar concepts while also searching for a bit of a neutral option around them. Obviously, I can't talk about the combat in these two games. I tried the first one and got my skull caved in the first encounter just before I wrote this. But as an SMT1 LARPer, it is really cool to see the origins of these games and concepts and ideas in a more unrefined state. SMT2 is a little more complicated, as it is a follow-up to One's World, but for the purposes of this video, we only have to go over two things. First, Steven is somehow still alive and kicking, given our new main character the Demon Summoning Program, and after an incredibly convoluted plot, we end up having to battle a version of the literal Judeo-Christian god Yahweh, who has deemed humanity forfeit. So, instead of chaos being the antagonistic force that kickstarts the game, in SMT2 it's the forces of law. Once again, I am a LARPer and cannot comment on the actual game of SMT2 in a review sense, but watching these videos gave me a lot to think about going into SMT4. Mainly because all I knew about 4 beforehand was that Steven was somehow in it, and not to let Walter near Minotaur. But suddenly, I had lore. And with lore comes my brain connecting the dots like Pee-wee Herman. See, when Yahweh appears in SMT2, he appears as this big-ass yellow head, very similar to Kagetsuchi in SMT3, and he basically serves the same role. In fact, the more I thought about it, pretty much every SMT or Persona game I had touched kinda ended in the same way, with humanity uprooting forces beyond comprehension that could be defined as the very cyclical status quo itself. But I'm sure that won't be relevant later. Overall, I was just giddy with excitement to get further into the series and see how it would evolve further. So, I took my first plunge into SMT4 has an incredible first couple of hours. The game was released in 2013 for the Nintendo 3DS and, as such, is really built for the handheld dual-screen experience. That's one thing I really have to praise the game for right out of the gate, on how well it uses the unique hardware to its advantage. Because SMT4 is a very different kind of SMT game compared to the one I had just gone through with Nocturne. It simultaneously builds off that game and evolves it, while being a bit of a return to form for series mainstays. And even on top of all of that, it throws in new mechanics and surprises into the mix. One of my favorite things a game can do is use its medium to its advantage, and the way that playing SMT4 feels like using the kind of technology the characters do is really freaking cool. My other favorite thing that a game can do is make me really confused while being incredibly intrigued with the scraps I'm given, which the first few hours of this game do incredibly well. The opening we're met with upon booting up the game is, well, it's really weird and confusing, that much is readily apparent.
Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani.
Many awaken from their slumber within the earth's soil.
The horn pierces the heavens. Planets are trampled upon as they descend on the earth.
We get a lot of voices spouting nonsense, or at least what sounds like it, to Flynn, our main character, in a kind of dreamlike state, akin to how most of these games start with the whole change the world, my final message kind of vibes to set you on your journey. This also is really akin to how SMT1 and 2 start also, with these dream sequences introducing our main character and future party members and alignments, which was really cool to see done in a new way. We meet a guy named Walter in a burning cityscape and another guy named Jonathan in some kind of desert. Both of them seem to already know our main character, and they both ask you to help them this time around, whatever that means. So, already, I'm intrigued, confused to all hell, and loving it, because I know it's all going to mean something later. That, and with how it parallels the first two games, it immediately gets me thinking about the reasons those scenes appeared in those, where our characters are all the alignment's respective messiahs, reincarnating over the years to bring about their respective ideal worlds. That heavily seems to be what's happening here too, as even Jonathan says he wants to bring about a world where peace lasts forever. But then we get a third appearance, one of a little girl with a kind of broken up and corrupted electronic voice, begging for your character to revive her.
Please, won't you revive me?
Fade to white, Atlas logo, and suddenly things are even more interesting. Compared to how Nocturne opens, I definitely like 4's world building and overall mysterious vibes much more, mainly because it confuses me way more in that kind of way that gives me threads to pull on. In Nocturne, Yuko just kind of goes, the world's gonna end, figure it out. But here I'm immediately drawn in with this fantastical imagery and the overwhelming sense that this world, these people, they seem to know me better than I currently do. And that just makes me want to know just as much as they do, and that's really effective. Then I'm hit with medieval castles, which is such a big jump from everything else I knew, and it just tells me how much I have to work and how far I have to go to achieve that kind of goal of understanding. So yeah, you're Flynn, you're a peasant class casualty in this world, along with your buddy Issachar. The two of you are about to take on a coming-of-age ceremony, which will determine if you become samurai, the protectors of the eastern country of Mikado, your home. This country is ruled by the noble class of luxuriers, which is established under the legacy of the kingdom's founding king, King Aquila. Seems simple enough, pull the sword from the stone, get chosen for the main quest, we're all on board. Then the stone turns out to be a power glove, which I can only assume means I will be under the direct command of Captain N, the samurai. This is the first really cool thing this game likes to do to utilize the framework of being a 3DS game. Your second bottom screen is literally your character's gauntlet menu, which is this kind of sci-fi anachronism in this rural society that seems to have our old buddy Steven's demonic summoning program built into it, along with this AI named Burroughs that all the samurai treat like some kind of magic guardian. It's pretty cool. So once again, all I know is that I know nothing and have puzzle pieces with no idea what image I'm trying to make. And I love it. The gauntlet activates for us and we're chosen as samurai, but Issachar isn't. Well, I'm sure he'll be okay on his own. The other new recruits are the pompous Navarre, the keen-eyed Isabeau, and, surprise surprise, Walter and Jonathan from our visions.
Huh? That's the name from my dream.
Everyone except for Navarre get along well, despite Walter and Flynn being formal casualties and Jonathan and Isabeau being luxuriers, although culture differences are made pretty apparent. Since now we've met our main cast, I should probably talk about something SMT does way better than Nocturne, being its characters. Something I said about that game's characters back in my last video, and I still stand by, is that the characters in Nocturne are more or less ideas than they are people, and that worked kind of a treat for that game. Each character personified their reason, which made sense for the world the game was set in, as well as the story that that game was overall trying to tell. The same base concept is kind of applied here as well, with a bit of an interesting twist. Flynn is protagonist man, Jonathan is the law hero, Walter's the chaos hero, Isabeau the neutral hero, and Navarre is the mandatory sacrifice for the plot gods. Where 4 takes things a step forward from Nocturne is that, given the more personalized and human nature of the story 4 is telling, its characters are, well, characters. Let's be real, the best characters in Nocturne were the ones you really only liked because of the story's weight and implications. I think I could count on one hand the times that each SMT3 character interacted with each other, without Demi-Fiend being the only reason the scene happened. Meanwhile here, Jonathan and Walter do respect each other as allies and fellow samurai despite not agreeing on big issues, and each pairing you could have between characters is unique in some way or another. It does feel a bit weird to say congratulations, you succeeded at writing characters, but I do think it's warranted here because these things were never something the series has really focused on or really even cared about before. Since the main appeal of the games was elsewhere, this kind of feels like a twist in some way, funnily enough. It's kind of like getting an unexpected seasoning on a burger. It's really cool because you usually wouldn't get like something with that with 90% of burgers, so this just makes it a meal to remember. Alright, we have our party, now it's time to get into the real gameplay of every SMT game, dungeon crawling. We learn that the samurai's actual job is to utilize the gauntlets and fighting prowess in order to defend Mikado from demons lurking within Naraku, a mysterious cave system that seems to go on for miles underneath their world. Our team gears up and gets to training, which brings us to the combat system. For the most part, the combat in SMT4 is kind of identical to Nocturne's. It brings back both the demon summoning and negotiation, with the phenomenal press turns I gushed about last time, with one new amazing addition. You know what that means. I get to talk about the greatest mechanic I've ever seen in a turn-based game besides parrying an Expedition 33, that being Smirk. Let's say Flynn or one of your controlled demons deals a physical attack to a demon weak to the physical affinity, or maybe just gets a critical hit. Not only does that give us another press turn, but occasionally it'll give that party member a buff called Smirk. Smirk lasts until your next action as that character, and it'll increase their evasion, accuracy, and critical hit chance and damage. Smirk is a godsend to an already great combat system, finally adding a kinda RNG to an SMT game that doesn't end with you getting sent back to the title screen. I think the best part about it is that it's so simple in concept, and yet it hits like pure crack. I remember having to try and explain the press turn system in the last video and going back into the intricacies there, but this is really just that simple. And yet it makes every part of the other systems better by its inclusion and the way it meshes with them. Another cool addition is how you learn new skills, that being from your demons upon maxing out theirs. Once you get every skill for a demon in your party, you can choose to add some of them to Flynn's set within the skill limit, or even just upgrade yours already if you already have one of those skills. This really incentivizes engaging with the demon summoning and fusion mechanics even more than usual, and it adds some nice characterization to how your party is learning to use their Demonica gauntlets more and more. The other thing I should really talk about in tandem with the combat is the level and dungeon design, which I really didn't talk about much in 3. The main reason for that is, let's be totally honest, the levels themselves in SMT games aren't really great by any means. Especially the layouts that remind me at times of cereal box mazes. I feel like this was less of a problem for me personally in 3 due to the way that game handled and the unique style of each area serving to at least make me go, ah yes, Yogi Park is a different level than the diet building. You know, despite being the same kind of samey feel outside of gimmicks. Here in 4, probably due to the 3DS framework and limitations, it feels way more constrained. I think the main two things that do this for me are the fact that you can see the map at all times on your bottom screen, and now enemies are no longer random encounters, but are on the field physically. These are both blessings and curses, because the map being on your screen makes it easier to navigate, but also kind of more tedious at times. And the physical enemies on the screen literally direct your attention to them rather than the environments. To be clear, it's not worse in these ways, just different. Even now, a year after I played these two games, I'm not sure which one's design I prefer, since both have their own strengths and flaws. It might be a good thing that you aren't focusing on the levels themselves due to the limitations in the small scale, but I do miss that scope in some ways, despite it really working for Naraku and other levels in particular. One thing I think that the tedium does well enough, though, is contributing to the feel of the opening, despite a harsh difficulty curve. After training for a while, getting to know the characters and scouring Naraku for a bit, we have to go find the missing Navarre, who, in an attempt to get back at the lower class Flynn and Walter, has ended up in a demon's domain that has warped space on a lower floor. These domains are the one time I feel like it kind of works to have serial box maze levels due to the story, but it's still a bit annoying to navigate. I just wish I could have something interesting happen. I mean, what happened to the intrigue from that elbow? Oh my god, is that SHIN Megami Tensei? The fuck is he doing in this game? Okay, so yeah, I knew he would show up in some fashion, but no one at the time this game came out did, and his sudden appearance here really threw me for a loop. Especially coming off the 1 and 2 LARP sessions, to see John Megami himself wheel up, randomly talking cryptically, feels so insane on multiple levels. First, why is he here? Does that mean that this game is in the same universe as 1 and 2? If not, please refer back to my previous why is he here? He's also serving the same role as he did in those games, which kind of begs the question, why wasn't he in 3? And what made that game so different? And for the plot of this game, he's connected to the little girl from the opening, saying that she took an interest in us, and we might be the ones entrusted with the future, whatever that means. In any case, he offers free healing, which is a rarity, along with a myriad of mysteries to figure out as we go along. We also end up beating the demon who created the domain and free Navarre, who failed so badly at being the pompous noble that he decides to leave the land of story relevance entirely. He is now cursed to only return when he is deemed worthy of a character arc in the next game. We'll get there next time, don't worry. But yeah, we have our party, our setup, our intrigue, All we need now is a hero's journey and sighting incidents to set us off on our main quest, and that arrives in spades when demons appear in Mikado, seemingly spurned on by talk of a black samurai. Turns out this mysterious figure has been spreading tomes across the casualty class that literally turns them into demons, including our old friend Issachar, so we have to put him down too. This civil unrest is a bit of a big deal, so we head after the trail of this figure, deeper and deeper into Naruku. We finally get a good look at this black samurai and wait, I recognize that outfit. That's the Strange Journey guy. I mean, I haven't played that game, but I at least know the look, so what the hell's going on? When I first saw this, I was legitimately worried that I was getting into some kind of cross-game shenanigans, and that I should stop then and there to catch up on that game. Luckily for me, it's just a reference. Still, I don't think I could have brought myself to stop either way, as I was slowly but surely getting really addicted to the combat again. SMT combat kinda does this thing to me where I forgive literally every sin it commits to me as just SMT being SMT, like I'm in an abusive relationship with Charon. By the way, I didn't pay that guy once. I am a proud little man who will title screen if I die. Still, I was getting kinda tired of seeing him every time I was paired with Walter for Minotaur. I don't have too much of a problem with some of the AI in this game, mainly because it gets fixed in Apocalypse, so I just kinda see it as something they were learning, but yeah. Walter ended it thus, as well as my life, many, many times. But hey, we're at the bottom of Naruto. There's even a window to look out for some reason. I wonder what's out there.
What is this? There are stars below us.
It's lovely.
Oh, I think I just found the actual game. Part of the reason why I was so hesitant to write this script and make this video was because of how big SMT4 really is compared to Nocturne. That game's kinda simple compared to this. The only characters that even matter are knee-deep in personality depth, and the story can be summed up as easily as everyone goes to the big tower to fight God for different reasons, and what the game is saying is way easier to talk about than what it actually does moment to moment. 4 is an entirely different beast though, because so much goddamn stuff happens from this point on. The world it's revealed we occupy is very similar to that of SMT1, where demons began attacking and missiles were launched to try and destroy them no matter the cost. In order to protect Tokyo, an unnamed savior used the guardian spirit of the city, Masakado, to form a protective dome that sealed the city in an eternal night. So we now have a full Tokyo to explore, one where the surviving humans and demons struggle to survive between multiple factions. There's the Ringagaya, the Chaos Worshippers who appeared in every previous Number game, and the Ashura Kai, a mafia-type organization that provides what little law they can in their own corrupt way. Then there's the Hunters Organization, who are more mercenaries for the little guy trying to get by in between everything else, and we still have to find the Black Samurai on the orders of Mikado and the church topside, who seem to be just as corrupt as everything else. Sure, I can skip through the quests where you just kinda go from place to place learning more about the world that I just described, but am I really doing it justice? This world is so much bigger than I can describe. It feels lived in a way that Nocturne really didn't, because that world was literally barren. And that's awesome. The people aren't the only ones with newfound character depth in this game, because the world has it too in ways that I just get lost in. Not only that, but now each one of our party members has to deal with this new revelation of a literal ruined world underneath them all this time, and the fact that this world of people just living the best they can against all odds are deemed unclean by those above who don't have to deal with any of it. I skimmed past a lot of SMT2, because that game is really complex in its storytelling, more so than this one. But one thing that it goes into, and 4 I think does even better, is how corrupting both law and chaos really are in terms of worldviews. The law factions crave order and status quos, because they keep them safe from what doesn't fit in their worldviews. Mikado, as we learn, is literally built on the suffering of everyone below them in its society and outside of it, held aloft in the promise of being just, despite all the evidence to the contrary. The forces of the Law faction are ruled by literal biblical angels that look down upon everybody that is other or unclean in their eyes. They only provide safety to those who pledge absolute, unquestioning allegiance. Meanwhile, the Chaos faction of the Ring of Gaia seems to uproot that, led by the Black Samurai Yuriko, but in doing so, they don't really care who they sacrifice in their quest to define the current power. We already saw how they used somebody like Issachar to sow chaos and preyed on his insecurities until he became something he wasn't and was killed. But Issachar was a necessary sacrifice to the chaotic cause, or maybe just somebody just as bad as the angels in their eyes, despite being completely innocent and ignorant of that truth. Their anger and rebellion is unending and all-encompassing, destroying all it touches just as indiscriminately as the order it seeks to uproot. Jonathan and Walter are caught in this struggle, seeing the points each side makes and the corruption of both, and they progressively become more and more extreme in their sidings respectively. Jonathan at first wants to create a safe world for all, one with just order to prevent suffering, but as he sees more of the Ring of Gaia's actions, including the reveal that Yuriko is actually a demon called Lilith, he feels he has no choice but to side with the angels who praised and protected him, and he becomes more and more unyielding in his quest for what is in essence domination. Meanwhile, Walter wants to create a world where the class system he was subjected to is destroyed, and he becomes more and more jaded seeing everything that was done to innocent people by the angels and lets it consume him entirely. Both of them are, by the end of the game, completely corrupted by their causes until nothing of their original intent to protect anyone even remains. It's heartbreaking, really, especially with how well the gradual change is done over the runtime. That's why 4 hits so much harder than 3 for me, because while each character in Nocturne was indeed a personification of their own ideal, they weren't anything other than that. 4 is making clear the case for neutrality in these issues, because we see just how much each side does to hurt these characters that we really grew to love. And that works far more effectively for what the game is trying to say. By the end of our quest, both sides get exactly what they want, and destroy themselves because of it. The Ring of Gaia and the Shurikai are destroyed, and Lilith is even executed, but Walter has gone looking for a way to bring forth more demons from the Expanse, using a machine kinda similar to that in the original SMT1, called the Yamato Perpetual Reactor. Everyone makes their way to it, seeking to either use or destroy it, but then it goes off and...
The gate has opened. Upon receiving knowledge and wisdom, the atom that learned desire has opened the gate once more.
We ask the mitochondria within you. Have you ever given thought to why humans are born? Why the world exists?
A single atom's revolt will damage no more than a single cell. The damaged cell will quickly be healed by the other cells.
In order to sever this chain, there is a decision yet to be made.
We shall show you the guideposts for that decision.
Welcome to the best part of the game. When we wake up, things are immediately strange. It's just Flynn, Jonathan, and Walter in the military base, and they each seem to remember you siding with them over the other. Things only get weirder when you leave the bunker, only to find that the entire city is gone, replaced with some kind of desert wasteland, the blasted Tokyo. After wandering for a while through demon-infested craters, presumably made by warheads long ago, the team finds another bunker full of humans shocked to see them, but even more surprised at their demonicas. Their leader, a man named Akira, says he had a dream about the same beings we saw earlier, called the White, who said that the team would come from another world to help them in exchange for the remote Akira holds to this world's reactor. Akira asks us to take down the monster polluting the surface with poison, a being called Pluto the Tormentor. Some of the survivors say that God sent Pluto to purge the surface of those he deemed unworthy, while others have spent their entire lives underground and doubt times before he even existed. After finding Pluto, it seems the survivors were on the right track, as it turns out to be some kind of machine built by angels in order to pollute the surface of the unclean, the same kind of extremist actions that they would commit in Flynn's world. When Pluto is destroyed, Akira gladly gives us the remote, knowing full well its activation will bring more demons into his world. But he believes that they should live in harmony, and with the power of the demon summoning program, he seeks to unite the world in a new civilization. The last thing he tells the team before departing is that he will name this new kingdom after the one Flynn hailed from, the Eastern Kingdom of Mikado.
If that were to happen, you would be King Akira of the Eastern Kingdom of... Huh?
Established under the legacy of the kingdom's founding king, King Aquila. Before we can even really process that little tidbit, we go back to the reactor and activate it again, just kind of hoping it's what we need to do to progress in some fashion.
Your atom has brushed against one possible world. It is the possible world that he chooses to preserve.
You have sensed it. You know that the future you chose to preserve was swallowed by an even higher power's will to preserve.
However, you have the choice to not preserve. We shall show you that possibility too.
But do not forget,
What lies in store for the future of humans
is to raise them in despair, because they are mere tools.
Once again, we wake up in the military base, but this time it seems to be a little more occupied. This Tokyo is ruled chaotically by the demons of the demonoids, who are humans fused together with demons. We quickly meet the ruler of this particular bunker, a demonoid curiously also named Akira, who asks the team to help him conquer the infernal Tokyo and overthrow its ruler, Kenji. Kenji seems to be in fear of a prophecy delivered to him by the Way, who say that the intruders will arrive to defeat him and take the remote to the reactor. This Akira is more cowardly and weak, despite having the strong will to become the future king of Tokyo, and he wants to create a world where everybody is equal as opposed to the one he lives in, where the strong rule the weak. We help him take over Shinjuku, and afterwards he reveals that the location of Kenji is with the Yamato reactor, and that he himself also had a vision of the Way, who said that our team are the messiahs who came to save their world. Kenji stands guard over the reactor, and upon defeating him, we activate it once again.
Your atom has brushed against two possible worlds. You have touched the possible world one chooses to preserve, and the possible world where one chooses to fight the stillness.
You have sensed it. Even if you elect to preserve the world, if it does not align with God's will, it will be cast into destruction. Even if you choose not to preserve the world, it will lead inexorably down a path of self-destruction.
Humans are but prisoners of God's expectations.
Let's take a break right here and actually talk about what the hell has been going on, what it's saying, and why it works so well for this game. I've already talked a lot about what this game says in regard to extremities, the way of law and chaos, but this segment takes things a bit further. Blasted Tokyo is a world built on order, so its citizens desire chaos to change things. Infernal Tokyo, on the other hand, is rampant chaos, and order has been imposed on it by those wanting to create a better world. The game seems to say, by having us see these scenarios in tandem with each other, that mankind has some kind of urge to seek the opposite end of this spectrum from where they currently are in any given point in time. Is that purely a the grass is always greener kind of scenario, or does it mean something fundamental about us as living creatures? In many ways, this being the core idea at the heart of the game as a whole is because this game is being a pure follow-up to both SMT 1 and 2. Infernal Tokyo's plot resembles that of SMT 1's world, while Blasted Tokyo's does so with SMT 2. SMT 4 now has the opportunity to look at these kind of scenarios as a sequel, and do so as a game that could only be made as a result of those previous entries. What the White are showing Flynn is, in essence, what the developers have shown us with this game, and simply asks the question of, why is this the way things are? And maybe more importantly, is there any other option to this cycle?
But we know a way to escape God's grasp. Yes, we will simply turn all to nothing to begin with.
Because we lack forms, we entrust the choice to you who have shape. Release all of humanity from God's control and become the true Messiah.
Now, Messiah, the time of fate. The power is in your hands to save every being and every world. Will you turn the world to naught with your hands as the Messiah?
What the White argue in this point is that there is no other way, that the only way out of the cycle is oblivion. They say that all people will ever do is destroy themselves over the things that they aren't in that moment, and that the extremities of order and chaos will utterly consume everyone. The first time I got to this point of the game, I was a little disappointed with how the White seemed to be so unrelated to everything else happening in the main story, and even where the game would kind of end up afterwards. It's really only now while writing the script and thinking about the game as a whole that I've realized just how important they are to the game, because defying the White becomes the driving force in literally every ending. Up to this point, Flynn and the others have been trapped by the cycle of law and chaos, and this is the point where their eyes are truly open to how all-corrupting the cycle is. If you agree to help the White in this moment, you get their ending, where Flynn destroys the world with them in order to avoid this perpetual cycle. But if you don't, if you've been swayed to one side of the spectrum, or maybe even the true neutrality that may be unattainable, it means you're betting all of your being on that ideal. If you continue the game past this point, your sum of choices in dialogue and quests are tallied on into the law and chaos scale, and it decides which ending you have staked your entire existence on. Because what you've done right now is allowed the cycle to continue, and you've decided its outcome this time. It really hasn't hit me until now, a year after playing this game, just how powerful that decision really is. It's quite literally the thesis statement of this entire game, that we will struggle and stumble, be hurt and hurt others, and seek the opposition to whatever currently rules us in this perpetual cycle, but maybe that's okay. Maybe the reason we hate the status quo so much is because we know a better future lies on the true route of neutrality between order and chaos. Maybe if we struggle with these opposing sides long enough, we won't be wholly corrupted by one of them entirely. All I knew going into SMT4 is that I wanted the neutral ending because it was deemed the best choice. But now I wholly believe in it. We cannot as people just give into one side fully, and we can't just give into despair either. So, as Flynn, I reject the White's proposal.
No. You and your messianic tendencies. What do you think you can do, leaving this world intact? Do you intend to preserve the current status quo? Are you going to destroy the order of things? So even you would make that choice. Cowardly human. But you are too late to walk that path. You have chosen to upend the status quo, yet you wish to preserve it as well. Why do you oppose us? Will even you place your hopes in the possibility of a future? Even after we have shown you many times there is no future for the human race, you are no longer of use to us. May you regret your choice here in this fabricated space until you die. The law of God, the temptation of demons, and the despair of the white. You turned them all down and chose your own path. For your current self, I am willing to tell you everything that I know.
Steven only appears here if your choices throughout the game are within exactly 8 points of the true neutral point between a law and chaos actions. For the purposes of the story that the game is trying to tell, as well as the point that it tries to make about neutrality being the best option yet the most difficult one to make, I kinda love that. From gameplay's perspective though, I wish that opening was maybe a little bit larger, cause fun fact, I was off by exactly 1 point on my first playthrough, and got a Jonathan jump scare at this point before I used a save editor. In any case, Steven tells us that we are currently in the Expanse, specifically in a bit ruled over by the way, which is the personification of humanity's collective will for its self-destruction into nothingness. In order to escape and save Tokyo, we hunt down and defeat the 4 avatars of the White, eliminating their hold on the world. Steven then tells us that in order to save both Tokyo and Mikado, we must reawaken the guardian goddess of the city itself, who is the little girl that we saw in the opening. If we manage to destroy the dome by allying ourselves with Masakado like that unnamed savior did to create it, we should be good to go. So, we get sent back to Tokyo alone. Jonathan and Walter are nowhere to be found as they presumably have chosen to ally themselves with Law and Chaos respectively. Flynn regroups with Isabeau as an all-out war begins between the angels and demons from the Expanse portal. The two learn from the founders of the Hunters organization that Flynn is actually the reincarnation of the previous Messiah, the unnamed savior who created the dome. As such, Flynn is able to speak with Masakado, who says that if he gathers up enough hope from the people of Tokyo like a spirit bomb, he should be able to destroy the dome. So, how do we get hope? Well, by becoming the next Messiah, a figure that everybody knows and relies on as a figurehead. Just refer back to my previous spirit bomb joke. In order to build our reputation, we have to... Wait, I don't actually have to clear every side quest in the game, do I? Oh, fuck! I mean, it makes sense. And continuing with the neutral ending needing to take actual effort to get, it's nice to see that you actually need to see all the content the game has to offer because of that. But like, this must have extended my runtime by at least 15 hours, I swear to god. It really tanks the pacing of the ending too, as other than the side quests, not much is left to actually do, so it feels way longer than it should be for the actual little bit of story that's left. It's not completely tedious though, as some of the quests are actually pretty fun and engaging, like the one where you meet a hunter named Nozomi who becomes the new leader of the fairies and merges with the goddess Danu. And every time you get further and further up the tier list of hope, I guess, you get this cool sequence in each community where you can clearly see just how much having a figure like Flynn is helping morale for people. So all that's left now is to defeat the leaders of the forces of Chaos and Law, whose power is all that stands in the way of destroying the dome. Surprise, surprise, it's Walter and Jonathan, each merged with their ultimate power to become Lucifer and Merkaba, respectively. If you do the Law or Chaos endings, you have to do the opposite boss in a unique dungeon, but since we defied both of those extremities, we have to do both of them. They're pretty fun bosses too, from what I remember, each having 2 phases with a form transition in between. Although I will say this Lucifer design, it's not it. Freeing Mikado's people and bringing them back to Tokyo, we get a nice scene where everybody starts to get along and celebrate the end of the war, and then we get an excellent final cutscene with the dome finally lifting.
everyone came back. I'm so happy.
My dear human, I am revived. It is all due to your efforts in granting hope to everyone. Tokyo will be restored to its former splendor. See, it begins. Thanks.
I think the best part about SMT4 is how simple it really turns out to be, but how deep it is in what it says at the same time. This game really only could have been made after the previous entries and what it says and does, building off their themes and lore in exciting ways that cut back to the heart of what made those entries so special, with the question of where do you land on this scale of law and chaos? Maybe you really liked what Jonathan was aiming for and sided with him, or thought Walter was just the coolest and agreed with him more. But for me personally, this neutral ending just hit different. In a modern world that is so incredibly divided, more so than ever before, it's really nice just to look at this game and say that we shouldn't lose ourselves in the midst of constant change, and feel validated for existing. Not only that, but it's so addicting to play and get lost in this world and just the overall vibes. I definitely give SMT4 a 9 out of 10, and even in the process of writing this video, it's made me realize just how much I love it more than I thought I did. It's truly an all-timer, and I'm going to put it right here in my current SMT ranking list. Also, I should mention that I do know where I'm going to put Apocalypse and Vengeance on this list, but I won't have them here just now because I do want to make videos on those two first, so stay tuned. In terms of looking at games I rank this up there with, it's currently sitting around Portal 2 and Nier Replicant on my overall games list, which isn't a strict ranking, but more of a I like this game as much as I like these kind of deal. This is one of the best games I've just ever played, and it really makes me glad that I stuck with this series after 3. This experience of playing this series has been a truly magical one, and one I've been so blessed to see not only how amazing they are, but how they evolve over time. The only thing I wish that this game did a little better was the pacing in that final neutral ending, but at this point it's just nitpicks. I really got everything I could have wanted from this experience, to be honest. It almost makes me wonder if they did continue the story or maybe expanded on it in some way, how would that go? Could they explain Steven a little more, maybe include some more characters? How could you even top a game like SMT4, and how would people even react to it? Well, that's a story for next time, because we have a lot to talk about there. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm really glad I could make this video even after so long. If you enjoyed it, please let me know down below and consider subscribing for the next one. It really helps. It might be a little bit before that Apocalypse video, but I promise it won't be another year like this one. I'm really committed to having a consistent upload schedule. In any case, take care of yourselves. Have a great day.